Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday again. Welcome back. It means it's stream time, and today I am joined by Bear, the Gen X GM, the
Hi.
much loved, well-known gentleman that he is. Um,
The fuck are you smoking?
at least in this circle, you are.
Well, thank you.
All right, anyways, it's another Sunday stream, which means it's kind of a stream with no particular intent. Just going to talk about gaming stuff. So I guess first thing to start with would just be like what you're up to game wise. I know you've got a few irons in the fire, and or at least
there's stuff coming up.
the fire stoked up at least.
Yeah, there's stuff coming up. Like my heroic game on Fridays is coming back. My Monday night game's coming back. I'm going to be playing in Cody's Wizards of Shadow City game on every other Tuesday. And I've got a new Bare Bones Fantasy game starting on the end of the month. And next month, Codex Albana returns, finally, after a summer of delays. Hello, Beans.
Yeah, I've not sure if I've got the Gamma World game with Cody tonight. I'm waiting to hear from him if that's happening. And then tomorrow is supposed to be by the sword, so we'll see. Had to not do that do that 2 weeks ago. I didn't run that because no, actually, am I off track? Maybe I am. Can't remember. Oh, here's a new face.
Hey,
Hello and welcome. Introduce yourself, sir.
I'm Leth. I actually found you because of Mage's Musing. I think he was on stream here.
Yep.
And hey, Barry, I know you.
Hey, Les. What's up, man?
Not much.
Cool. So yeah, we're just kind of kicking it off here with the introductions. Yeah, I actually cannot remember if this is the week I'm supposed to. Yeah, this has got to be the week I'm supposed to run by the sword on Monday, because we just did my D&D game last Monday, so or last Sunday, excuse me. It all blends together, especially when you start missing sessions. It's like, oh my god. Yeah, I mean, I would love to run a lot more stuff, and but I just really am having a hard time finding the wherewithal plus the time in my schedule, which is sad because I have like big blocks of time where I don't do anything, but they also tend to be booked up with other players. According to Grumpy Old Slan, I'm running by the sword in 8 days, so I'm a week off. That means that
I don't know much about by the sword. Is that a setting or?
By the Sword is a setting that I'm running for. It's on alternating Mondays. We're running an old school Essentials game. By the Sword is the name of the campaign. It is a Conan-esque sword and sorcery style of game. So kind of low magic, gritty, adventuresome stuff without not a lot of the high fantasy elements. We're like 8 sessions in on it or something like that now. And it's pretty good. You got a good set of characters, using a lot of the alternate classes from Carcass Crawler. We've had some changes along the way. Like we started out with sort of a really low power version of a magic user, and it ended up being that character was really doing a lot of standing around and not doing much. So we have now just sort of made him the standard magic user, even though it's a kind of a Conan type world. That just kind of hand wave it by saying, well, you're one of very few actual magic people around. And we've added some dark and dangerous magic elements in there as well. So like if he has to roll when he casts, and if he fails to cast, there's fallout. So, but yeah, By the Sword is the name I gave the campaign, and it's been going strong for 8 sessions now, little 2-hour sessions every other Monday. So.
It's got wicked channel art.
It's bare, but
what I helped.
I helped. It is a great banner, and that's why it keeps getting posted every time I post an episode.
Indeed.
I wish I had artistic talent.
Oh, I don't. I just know how to use AI.
Yeah,
Fair.
I mean, I have no ethical problems for using AI art for things like channel banners and throwaway art, like you would like if you're trying to do an NPC for a campaign, because nobody's got time or money to engage artists for that kind of throwaway.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with AI art in general. I think it's getting overblown. It's another medium. I mean, people got upset with photography whenever it came out.
Dude, I remember being around in the late 80s when Photoshop was taking off and artists were calling Photoshop people, "You're not an artist, you're just a computer guy." And then now all of them use it, you know?
I know, it's just
So
going to be another tool like that.
I do have some issues with it myself because, unlike Photoshop or digital music or photography in general, AI, the skill set required for it is a lot narrower than, like, for example, you still have to know your shit to really use Photoshop effectively or to make digital music effectively or to do photography. AI really doesn't require that much of the artist, but that's just my position on it. I mean,
I think Nerds Nerd had the best. And I tend to default to her because she knows a lot about this stuff. She said it best. She said the only morally questionable AIs are the ones that are the stable diffusions, where someone goes on to DeviantArt, downloads this artist's entire catalog, and then feeds it into an AI to replicate their style. And I think that's a problem. But otherwise, the AI sampling a million samples and then making something from it is no different than the regular artist using a light board or a light box, or looking at other artists and aping their styles and stuff like that. Yes,
yeah,
the talent.
that's not really the problem I ever had with it. Not to turn this into the AI stream. I mean,
Turn
every
into the AI.
every artist learns from and is inspired by other artists, myself included. Yeah, if you look at a lot of the comic book art I attempted back in the day, you could see, like, here's his Arthur Adams phase. Here's here's his um, but and like even when I'm sculpting, like some of sculpting miniatures, or some of my earliest sculpts were very Jim Henson esque, just because that's the type of critters and design that was on my mind when I was making them. So I don't fault AI for that. What I really have an issue with, honestly, is the AI artist elevating themselves to the same level as a traditional artist.
Oh yeah, but that's just human. That's nothing to do with AI. That's absolutely just human
No,
bullshit.
but the AI is
If they're just
it's,
like,
it's wrapped up
doing
in
the
that.
whole AI thing, I can see where you're coming from. My thoughts are on it. If you're just using it as another tool to touch up something that you drew yourself, that's a lot different than just taking an AI generator and just generating 1,000 pictures.
Oh yeah, I mean
And
that
I
is
say
no
that
different. That's no different than, say, like doctors using AI to help scans for things that they missed with their human eye.
Yeah.
That's using AI to augment the skill set and augment the process.
not to mention,
That,
I really don't care for those people who do the first part. It's just if they try to act like they're the artist, like a great artist because they do it, yeah, that's a little bit much.
yeah,
I agree.
you go back to the guy who traces comic book stuff and then said, "Look at this cool character I drew from scratch." Now, I drew a lot of my character art for games that way back in the day because I didn't know how to draw well, and it actually helped me learn to draw over time. I'm still no comic book artist, but at the same time, I would never tell people, "Hey, look at this thing I drew from scratch." My friend and I, who did that all the time, we had our traces and then we had our drawings, and we were very clear on those. Like, this is a trace, this is a drawing, and the traces were, here's a pose and the basic musculature, the line, the basic line work, and then we would draw the costume and do modifications over that stuff. So, but anyways,
Yeah.
But
so Leth, what kind of games do you do? What kind of gaming stuff do you do?
Mainly RuneQuest, and there's a little bit of a White Wolf game,
Cool.
mostly. RuneQuest is a weird one because it's kind of a homebrew setting, set in basically Forgotten Realms because we were playing in Flan and on the Moon Sea. And, well, we just got done with like a major rune quest on that. And now we're basically getting ready for our next big, what you call it, campaign? Or
Do you
quest?
use the folk magic?
Yeah, we have the spirit magic, rune magic, and sorcery type of stuff.
Oh, is that what they call folk magic now? Spirit magic? Is that the new term for it?
Yeah, that's what RuneQuest always used. Spirit
No,
and
wasn't
rune.
it, wasn't it called folk magic at one point back in the day, or am I
Mm,
crazy?
No, it was always spirit magic. That was first
Really?
ed. Yeah.
Huh.
Now sorcery is more of a third ed thing. That came in the third edition.
Maybe it's from like Magic World. I don't know.
I don't know because I mean I remember it being called spirit magic and then rune magic. It's where RuneQuest got its name was.
Oh, it's Mithras. Mithras called it folk magic. That's
Ah,
who.
but I mean I could see where you could call it kind of folk magic because a lot of the spells in there are more utility
Yeah.
and other things instead of being full combat. There are combat spells to be honest, but it's mostly like you'll get more utility out of it than actual combat use. But yeah, in our campaign, we actually have these dwarven family that we kind of integrated into, and soon we'll be searching for their ancestor, which is a dwarven god.
That's cool.
Oh yeah,
Well, I do love me some BRP, so I'm even though I'm not a RuneQuest guy, personal choice. It's nice to.
I don't blame you. I mean,
I just don't like Glorantha.
I
hey,
actually dig Marantha, but
I mean, I
yeah.
like Glorantha itself. I don't like modern BRP because I feel like it's sad whenever you can't make your own setting and use the magic in it, and that's what BRP does. If you're not playing Glorantha, it rips out the magic system.
I don't know. I mean, you can literally like I've used stuff from Magic World. I tend to use Call of Cthulhu 7e as my base.
BRP is basic roleplay.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, basic role playing Chaosium.
Yep.
Chaosium sort of generic system.
Again, older like if this is why I like third edition the most, the Avalon Hill version.
I
because
love that edition.
it didn't take out the magic whenever you were trying to play it in different settings. It gave you the whole thing in the rules and allowed you to use whatever setting you wanted.
So I'm kind of curious about that. When you say they take out the magic, is it just that the magic's not published in the books for the other settings, or does it? I mean, how do they keep you from not from using the magic?
They try to tie the magic system to the setting itself.
Oh, well, that's just an easy hand wave for a GM.
You could
Yeah.
fix it, I guess, but I find it not as good as
Yeah, like integrating real world pantheons into your fantasy game. It's like, okay, I'm going to use the entire Norse pantheon, but I'm just going to go ahead and call them different names or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's basically what we do with a lot of things. We have actual pantheons of different gods in our setting.
Yeah,
I'm like you. I like the the third edition Avalon Hill box set. That was the best, but
yeah.
it's so fucking expensive on the secondary market.
I have that sitting on my shelf right now.
Shut
I'm
up!
lucky
Like
because
Tiger.
my cousin he married someone. He married this one our DM, and she actually has all of this stuff and all the homebrew stuff that they had.
Nice.
Oh.
I
I like it.
You're still here.
You're still here, no, dude.
Oh, okay. It's lagging out a little bit.
Weird. So I know, like in my 5e game, which I do run a 5e game. I just got done with a massive campaign arc, and then I've got to try and figure out what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do with actually the next arc, because it's the same. The campaign's not dead. I'm just like, all right, what do I do next? So I've kind of figured that out, but we'll see where it goes from there. I don't want to say too much because I think some of my players watch my streams.
Jeez, I just
Yeah.
looked it up for fun on Noble Knight. The RuneQuest Avalon Hill Deluxe
Dang.
Edition box set in excellent condition is $125 Canadian on Noble Knight. Jesus
Yes.
Christ.
Hey, GM Jen Markowitz. But yeah, I was gifted it by a buddy of mine who's got phenomenal thrift store karma. His wife can shop secondhand stores like she was shopping standard retail. She just has that kind of mojo, and it's where I got my BX expert set, my basic box set. That just something they pulled off of a shelf. This is of course back before D&D boomed, so it's a little easier probably then. But also the Avalon Hill RuneQuest, my was it Mayfair Games version of the Invincible Overlord box set.
Oh, nice.
The whole Birthright set, like it's like he is like, here's this box set, the Birthright box set. And I'm like, cool. And it's got like 5 of the supplements in it inside the box too. I'm like, ah. But yeah, he's had this. It's always been insane. You could literally give him a shopping list to go thrift shopping with and get probably a good 50% of what was on your list. But they know where to go, and they make a thing of it. They've got kind of a secondhand little cottage business of their own, like reselling on eBay stuff that they pick up at thrift stores and stuff. So they've got it down to the science.
I don't know about that.
Nope, not at all. I was talking to Bear about trying to find a horror system to run. I've got a few, but I don't know which one I want to run. Because I got the whole Spooky Town game that I want to run, which is the kids on bikes in the 80s horror campaign.
There was one I recently heard about Appalachia.
So
might be a good one.
No. So that system, I've heard about it. It's actually, and the type of game it is much further up there than it's kind of up there with Call of Cthulhu, and it's not sort of the lightweight system that you would want for like kids on bikes in the 80s kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, interestingly enough, that game comes from a podcast that I listened to for the longest time. That is
Gods of Appalachia.
Yep.
I mean, couldn't you go with the Pulp Cthulhu then?
Well, if I was going to go with anything, I would go with Call of Cthulhu, which is actually the subsystem that was presented in a particular Call of Cthulhu scenario for running a simplified system for Call of Cthulhu for using like kid characters. It's actually a fun tongue-in-cheek thing where you have, for example, almost all of your subterfuge and naughty skills are under one bulk skill called playing with matches, and then you've got other things like being tough and stuff like that. So it's very it makes a very rules light Call of Cthulhu. I mean, I also have like Dark Places and Demogorgons, which is effectively BX retooled for that genre. I have the actual Kids on Bikes game. The only problem I have with Kids on Bikes is it turns out, while it's beautifully presented, it's much more of a storyteller game than an actual RPG with some meat to it. And I'm not a huge fan of the super light storytelling games. It's just
looking at the old Pace Setter Chill or the Mayfair Games Chill.
I have both, and I don't know. The other thing that always has to be considered anytime I'm thinking of a game is who I'm playing with and the how I'm going to be running it and the level of work to get people into it. If it's a more obscure system, that's always a problem because then you got to find a way to get everybody the rules. If it's a particularly complex system, then you have to take extra time to make sure everybody understands the system. So things like Dark Places Demogorgons have the advantage of just being effectively D&D at their core mechanic. So people who know D&D can easily integrate Dark Places and Demogorgons. Call of Cthulhu intimidates people because it looks hard, but it's really easy to actually play. I have heard that from people. They're like, I get lost looking at the book and trying to make a character, and it's just very intimidating. It's very daunting. Except for once you know what you're doing, it's not.
I wish I could play another Call of Cthulhu game. My first one didn't go very long.
Well, they're not meant to go very long, to be honest.
Yeah, but that wasn't because of the game. That was more of the players.
It depends on if you're doing a campaign or one-shots. I mean, Call of Cthulhu as a campaign very much works. And the game is built for it to work that way. You just have to... Your players have to... Like you said, it comes down to your players. Your players have to be willing to engage with everything the system has and manage their characters. If your players just push their characters and push their characters and push their characters, then yes, it's not going to go very far. They have to be willing to park a character for a while and maybe play a new character while that other character is recuperating in an asylum or getting some much needed rest. Like my wife switched characters. She had this one character who's really cool. It's the one she started off in the campaign, but that character's sanity was dipping too low, and that character had a high credit rating. She's like, I'm going to go to a high-end recovery facility and just spend some time there getting back in tune with myself. And then she made another character and played along. Because it's easy to just integrate a new character in a Call of Cthulhu generally as well. So we had another player who pushed his character and just kept pushing his character and didn't give his character time to rest and recuperate, and he went insane and then died. So he got both of the general outcomes of Call of Cthulhu. So, but yeah, you
I didn't get that far.
Yeah,
Came close, but didn't get there. I had a cool character that I named Barry. He was basically like an old school like bank robber that I just decided to play.
Oh, looks like he's breaking up again there, Les. You went a little choppy and robot-y again. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Right now, StreamYards is just being a little bit laggy for me. Fix that somehow.
But
yeah.
So, Bear, how is your kit bash of Star Trek going?
It's good. I took a break because I'm waiting for some resources to come in that I got my hands on, including a better condition copy of the Last Unicorn Games core book and the player's guide, which has stuff in it I want to adapt. But otherwise, it's coming along. I'm actually looking forward to when I actually get to play it. That could be fun.
Did you ever try that indie kind of rules light version of Star Trek called Far Trek?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's 2 rules light for me.
Yeah, it is a little rules light. I imagine it would be fun if you wanted to. I have run it. It seems like the sort of game that would be really nice if you just had more casual people to play with, people who are maybe Star Trek fans first and gamers second. Because it has enough to get them into the spirit of Star Trek, and it's got this kitschy little rules that play off the tropes of Star Trek, kind of like the red shirt rule, for example. But I don't think it's like for guys like you and I, it's probably it's too light. I mean, I like this. If I could take BRP, or the Call of Cthulhu system, and then just build that into Star Trek, I would be happy. Because
it can be done.
It's got a skill system already. Which, I mean, although at that point, why am I not just playing FOSSA? Because Worlds Beyond.
So this is basically BRP as a sci-fi game.
Oh, nice. I have not heard of that one.
Well, so it's a It's a third party, and Chaos liked it so much that when the third party went under, they bought all the excess stock from them, and then selling it through their store for years. And now you can only get on the secondary market. It's cheap on the secondary market, but it's basically, if you read it, you go, "Hey, this is BRP with the serial numbers filed off."
Yeah,
but it's a sci-fi game.
So when it comes to Trek, and not to turn this into another Trek stream,
Trek stream.
Watch everybody flee. When it comes to the damage of weapons in Trek, how do you prefer it? Do you like the ability to just straight up be able to disintegrate somebody?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so do I.
So FASA did it perfectly. FASA, when you had the heavy stun setting, so the stun setting did, let's say, 90 endurance. Most people had 70 endurance, so they were going to get stunned. The heavy stun did 150 endurance. Nobody had that much endurance. They could only have 99. So the heavy stun's taking them the fuck out. So all the other levels, kill 1, 2, 3, had damage dice you would roll. They had a modifier like plus this, plus that, plus whatever. So, kill 2 and up could pretty much fucking waste a character. But disintegrates damage was literally the word disintegrated.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. I know that, and it was it was a more mature game in that they left it up to the players to realize that the Federation characters shouldn't be going around disintegrating people or even killing them in general. Klingons, on the other hand, are going to be more than happy to disrupt anybody and disintegrate them, just because, unless they need them alive for whatever reason. But I prefer a game system in general, and this is kind of going back to what kind of initiated the conversation a few streams ago. One of the reasons I had a problem with Modifius is that my phaser was dependent upon the game system to tell me that it could work the way that it does in the show. Yeah. When I'm wanting to wide angle stun a bunch of things, it should be an effect of the weapon. It should not come down to a die roll to determine if I can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, a to hit roll, fine. I mean, I know somebody argued once, well, isn't it to hit roll just letting, leaving it up to a die roll? There's a difference between a to hit roll or a equipment use roll or something to that effect, and rolling to actually find out what the effect of the weapon is. I mean,
oh my God, Sax, stop stalking me. I think when you're in a fantasy game, you want that variable damage. When you're in a superhero game, you don't, and when you're in a sci-fi game, you don't. And there's a difference because they're a different kind of heroic fantasy. Fantasy is the heroism of the individual with the tool. So buy this sword, buy this axe, buy this spell, buy this arrow.
Yeah.
Sci-fi and superheroism they're not about that. They're about the character's story, what they're doing, what they're, man versus machine, man versus environment, man versus whatever, hero versus villain. So I think you're better off with static damages in those cases, because then you can get a consistent behavior pattern, where the whole idea of a fantasy fight is like, he might be better than me, he might get a lucky blow in, blah, 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 blah. You don't see that in the medium of the hero or the superhero or the sci-fi. They tend to be more, if this happens, it's going to hurt. You know what I mean? And
science fiction tends to be about, the skills and the characters doing things, and the equipment just kind of works.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Unless it's got the quirk that it doesn't work, like you're in a Millennium Falcon or something like that, right? But then again, that's the character of that thing, and that's usually the exception. Guns always work like guns. Computers always work like computers, and you can rely on them to a degree. When they fail, it's usually because of some other force working against them, not because they have a randomly determined effect by the system.
But I also like that because it puts that's, as Bear said, it's a focus elsewhere. It's more about the skill of the character. It's about the direction of the story. It's about the determination of the players, as well as their creativity in the situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, it should be the characters and the players behind them utilizing the equipment and the skills that they have to solve problems, not and yes, there should be some dice rolls in there, but it should really be more about how can I come up with creative and interesting ways to use the stuff that I know works
Yeah.
to solve the problem.
But it's definitely one of the reasons for why I really like the interlock system from The Witcher, where you've then got the character, if they are a great swordsman, you will put a bunch of points into their swordsmanship, and then have a very strong body that can then back it all up. That means that you've got like a very strong base. Even though you're rolling a die, you're going to have a very strong base at being good at this, because that's what your character's meant to be good at.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the. I mean, Interlock is kind of up there with, say, like FOSSA and BRP, in that it's mostly a skill-based system, and attribute-based system, where equipment works because it's equipment. My cyber arm, because Interlock goes all the way back to Cyberpunk, and actually even before that, Mechton. But when I'm, my cyber arm works like a cyber arm all the time. My gun works as a gun all the time.
But that is my point, because again, with D&D, the variables, the bonuses you're going to get won't all. It can at a certain point become significant enough that it will throw you over the edge. But with the interlock, it is again down to the character and how you've been building them up, or what they are centered around, and that I like.
In Interlock, if you focus too much in Interlock, or like in Call of Cthulhu, for example, if you focus too much on your character, you're awesome at something, but those games usually come down to needing much more of your character sheet to get through some problems than your one specialty. Now, in Cyberpunk, you're often a group of specialists, so Interlock works there. But like in Call of Cthulhu, one of the biggest problems you can run into with the investigators being, not problems, the biggest challenges you can run into with investigators generally being kind of normal people, is there's lots of times where nobody has the perfect skill for that situation. And that's fun. Yeah. And that's kind of realistic. I mean, if you're a librarian, a private detective, a taxi driver, and a line cook who suddenly find themselves dealing with the horrors of Lovecraftian cosmology, you're probably not going to be all that well equipped.
No.
Maybe the private dick is going to be your linchpin there, because he's at least probably got some investigative skills and some gun skills, and of course, with the characters being what they are in that game, your background plays a lot. Like going back to the game that I had been running, which has been on a long pause for now, we had my wife's character, whose current career was a socialite mystic. She was vaguely psychic. She had converted a room in her parents' brownstone mansion that she had inherited into a seance room. But her background was as a volunteer nurse in the Great War. So she had a lot of hardcore abilities from being a nurse, and now she's a mystic. And then we had a newspaper guy who had been in the trenches in France. We had a car driver guy who had also been in the trenches in France. And we had a doctor who had been in the trenches in France, because we were playing in 1928.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Every
male had been in the trenches.
Definitely.
We had one character come along who hadn't been in the trenches, and he was a logger from the Pacific Northwest. But still, that gave him axe skill, not just that skill, but
strength. Yeah,
in strength. So much. We had one character who did not have a military background. His current career was, he actually didn't have a background. His current career, he was just a writer. His whole thing was he got mixed up in the campaign because his character wanted to be a big time adventure writer, but he hadn't really been on a lot of adventures yet because he was younger. So he's like, I need to go out and experience the world. And did he pick the wrong group of people to do that with? I think he was thinking wars in Spain, climbing Mount Everest, not Chinese Cthulhu cults in San Francisco. But no, so yeah, Call of Cthulhu, your characters are going to get by on their skills, not so much by their technology or by special abilities. Um, yeah, anyway. But
I agree with that.
But it's also the focus of like the systems themselves, which I like. We're going to have the variations between them for what they're trying to do different.
yeah, I'm kind of in a lot of ways I'm there with Bear right now, where although I keep playing D&D because it's what I know and what I can get people to play, but it's not really what I want to play. I like games. I prefer games. In fact, I've said it many times. Had I played Call of Cthulhu earlier in my gaming career, it'd probably be my number one game because I really like running and playing it more than I do D&D because I like classless systems where your characters are a combination of skills and abilities, as opposed to classes that sort of pigeonhole you. Yes, Oscar.
Yeah, no, I was just going to agree with you. I'm having an absolute wonderful time with Heroic because there is the creativity of building a superhero. I don't have all the mathematical crunch that comes with games such as Mutants and Masterminds or Ascended from Artwork. I have a very simplified idea, something that can be easily translated around. Players can take inspirations from elsewhere, whether it be other systems or comics, and it's an easy sort of mishmash of like, here's the concept behind the power, here's how we translate it around, and that helps. And I like the creativity it brings out. Actually, has allowed it to make it easier for me as a narrator or as a game master to just run it easier with almost like each session being focused on a specific objective or like a episode 1A and then episode 1B interconnected that will allow me to sort of keep it sort of semi-focused. And I like that.
I think the
some.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, having the exposure and having these sort of games now being at my repertoire, it's allowing me to like go out to my groups and basically go, hey, I want to do something that's different and that's not D&D. Let's try this. So, like my current plan is that once the Sunday group for the exploration, Eli, my plan is that once they are done, once they've defeated the current big bad evil guy, my plan is I'll say that's it, that's fun. I now want to try Witcher. I want to throw them into that universe.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, my gaming group is. My current gaming group is my regular gaming group. I should say it's a little difficult. So I've got one player who has flat out said he doesn't want to play anything other than 5e, not because he's a 5e fan. It's just that's the system he knows, and he doesn't have the bandwidth to learn another system.
Mm-hmm.
And I can respect that. Which once I found out his background as a person and a gamer, I'm like, that is very much an informed decision on your part because he is a multi-generational gamer. Like he has parents and uncles who were gamers, so he's not like just some rando guy who just likes 5e. His family goes to Gen Con annually as a family. It's he's a gamer, and so if he's a gamer and he's making that choice, I can very much respect that because you, and and if anybody wants to just play one game, that's cool. But then I've got one player in my group who will play anything, which is cool. And then everybody else is kind of iffy. Do they have time? Do they have interest in the genre? I think every group needs that one player who will literally play everything and anything. It's like, just tell me what we're playing. But yeah, and then so I've kind of got this weird combination. Then I've got kind of one super casual player in my group who is rarely even there. The old geek has joined us, Endosorian and Full Metal Dragon. And we had a Marhawkman show up too as well. Cool. But yeah, so yeah, but this whole thing started with talking about trying to find the system I wanted to use for the Spooky Town game. I was going to say, Zach, just about your comments on running Heroic. A superhero genre is probably one of the most user-friendly 5. Go ahead, Bear.
Why do you want to talk?
For Spooky Town, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Never picked it up.
It's a great system. It's light. It plays well. It covers all the horror elements you're going to want to have, and the level of horror is going to be determined by you, the GM, ratcheting up things or tiling things down.
That's cool. Yeah, because I want to be able to play everything from with that game. I want to run very much everything from like Goosebumps to Gremlins to It.
It would work.
So because it just I want it to be sort of a palette, small town horror, kids on bikes, and just kind of play it with a very open table, kind of like whoever's there. But what I was going to say about superheroes, kind of good segue there. Superhero as a genre is really forgiving for GMs and players. Death is never really permanent, so character death is sort of there's always a fun way to bring a character back. Who's there and who's not there on a given day is also easy to excuse. How often do we see characters like just sort of disappear for an issue or two in comics and then come back?
Yeah.
It's very forgiving. It's one of those. It's one of the genres that's perfect for open table gaming, honestly, in my opinion. Because if you have a player who only shows up every so often, maybe he's the Spider-Man in this week where he can play as that team-up issue.
Well, one of the things I learned the hard way in superhero games is, hey, we're in the middle of a fight, and now Steve can't make the next session. Well, guess how the next session starts? Hey, Steve, Brickman just tanked Steve into the wall, and he's unconscious in the rubble. And we're going to keep playing without Steve there. Because you have to.
Yeah.
That's harder to do in D&D. That's harder to do in sci-fi. But in superheroes, it is really easy to take care of it.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. I've had, with my heroic game, there's been an instance where one of the players just could not make it, and we wanted to push on. So it was the whole case of like, okay, well, his character's got things to deal with, while the other two, ran off and did their investigation and their insights and fought a minor villain. And then, so the game just keeps on going. And I've even got one of the players now saying like he doesn't like his character, so we're now going to swap him out for something else, and then that'll be more engaging. Sorry,
which one?
So that is the one who did martial arts. Ren was what his character was called. He was the one who couldn't make it the other time, and he's reviewed his character. And we've come to the agreement that like the personality he gave it didn't really match up, so we're trying to replace him with one that's going to be more cooperative with the general group, because he was trying to
I'll be honest with you, that's why I didn't play, was because of everything being based around that dojo and that whole thing. I was like, it's not interesting to me. I get why people would like it, but I was like, it's not interesting to me. So I'm a little shocked to hear that's the character that's being swapped out was the one that was the catalyst for all of that. That's interesting.
Well, that's another thing about that genre is it's really easy to change characters if you get tired of one. Because, in this issue, such and such leaves the team forever.
In this issue, an X-Man dies.
That's fair.
Next week, they're back.
Well, that's a myth, and I'm going to address it because I hear a lot of people saying that, and even Eli saying it's, characters come back. Characters come back after a great amount of time has passed.
Oh, yeah.
It's never the next issue they're back alive. If they get killed in issue 1, they're back in issue 2.
That's not what I meant to imply.
No, I know. I'm just saying, but a lot of people think that's the way it is. They think there's a revolving door on the superhero mortality, and that's because of the death of Superman. The death of Superman and then the rebirth of Superman taught the comic industry they could kill whoever they wanted and just bring them back later.
I stopped believing in permanent character death once they brought Bucky back.
Well, that was always the rule. There were 3 deaths that were never allowed to be undone in the Marvel Universe. Uncle Ben, Bucky, and Captain Marvel. And all 3 have been brought back at some point or another. And it's like, fuck, guys, The worst was Jean Grey. The bringing back of Jean Grey, undoing the entire Phoenix thing was so fucking sick, and they've abused it now to this point in the comics itself, that the Phoenix Force is possessing people left, right, and center. It's become con. It's become con for Marvel, in that the writers that are using it don't understand things, so they just do it like con, or they do it like the Borg. They overuse it because it was popular. So if you're running a superhero game, you have to make it matter. You have to make the death matter.
I'll be right back.
No worries. If the character's dropping out, make the death matter. And if you're bringing the character back, try and stay true to not only the life of that character, but their death as well. So it comes across with a bit of pathos and a bit of gravitas. At least that's what I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah, fun. Okay.
That's not really much more to build upon. That's, generally speaking, having done so many years of D&D, the only way I really sort of see if characters are killed, then you're going to have to go through the whole bring them back somehow methodology. So I've yet to really sort of cross that barrier when it comes to the superhero side. So,
to be fair, I mean, how do you really kill Wolverine? He's
been done.
practically immortal.
It's been done.
To me, it would be more the whole case of it's not so much the killing it. I mean, I know by the comics it's been done. I take the stance of you just need to contain them, put them in a box, throw away the key, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Deadpool did to him.
Look at Nightmare of the Future Past, where the Sentinel blasts every atom of fucking organic material off of his skeleton. You know what I mean? There's nothing left to regenerate. Mm-hmm. It can be done. And it's all going to be mattering of the creativity. And the problem is that in superheroes, people get fucking lazy. Writers get fucking lazy. So Wolverine can never die. Batman always has a plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's even Deadpool could be permanently killed if someone completely disintegrates his entire being into nothingness, right?
It's the same with any of the X character kills the Marvel universe. They've done those a couple of times. It's okay.
Oh yeah. And with the Croatoa thing where they were coming back to life was silly. But one of the best things I ever saw was John Byrne, when he took over Superman. He was doing a conference at San Diego, I think it was. And someone in the audience asked him this question. They said, what if Lex Luthor took some kryptonite and had the best sniper in the world made with a kryptonite bullet, and then when Superman makes a public appearance, he shoots him in the head and Superman dies? And John Byrne's answer was the best fucking thing I ever heard in my life about that, which he said, he goes, you know what, that's a really great idea, and I clearly see that you put a lot of thought into it and you've made sure that it made sense for you, but we're in the business of selling comics. And it was just they just ended the point right there, which is, you could do these things, but they need to sell comics next month. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. And at the end of the day, that's what you're here for. We're not here to throw realism into it. It's supposed to be heroic stories.
Yeah,
nice, Brian.
The whole reset of why new characters never progress too.
Well, that's the other thing I don't like about superhero role-playing games. One, I don't like when a superhero role-playing game tells me that they're a comic book simulator. No, you're not. Because comic book characters have writers and editors on their side and will always have what they need in that pinch, so you can't simulate that. Second of all, it's a fucking game. I would rather a superhero game than a comic book simulator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Left, you've been quiet. What do you got to say?
Not much. I mean, I'm more hoping that soon I'll be able to play the White Wolf game, the vampire game, but the DM on that one's being really slow on it.
Which one of them? 5th edition, 2nd edition, Requiem?
I can't remember which version, to be honest.
Fair enough. No, Vampire's a fun game. Full stop.
I had a really cool character concept. I was going to play a Toreador that was half Japanese. The character was also going to have Cyrus sleeping with the enemy. So basically a Death Wish character. Kind of playing the game on hard mode. At one point, I even thought about taking Toreador magic as one of the things, but, let's not make it that hard.
I mean, yeah, the World of Darkness is one of those of where like doesn't matter how big your character is, there's always going to be a big fish, and you almost make the game very hard for yourself just by picking up all these other quirks and disadvantages, and if the DM reads them, then you can have a fun time.
Yeah,
I was playing that game on hard mode.
I enjoyed White Wolf's games. I enjoyed the World of Darkness stuff, but I'm more of a World of Darkness as a whole fan as opposed to any particular facet of it. I mean, and as far as the ones I've played, I've only played Werewolf, Vampire, and Mage.
I
Well, that's not true. I played Changeling once for one session, and I played Wraith once for one session, but
I've only touched Vampire and Hunter, and I prefer Hunter.
I actually got into the game through Werewolf and not Vampire. Werewolf was the first book I picked up because Vampire, I'm like, meh. And then I saw, but wait, werewolves, you say?
Look,
Eco-terrorist furries, you say?
Yeah, it was just like the whole. I've always been in horror movies. I've always been a bigger werewolf fan than a vampire fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've watched both and I've loved both, but Howling and the Howling series and American Werewolf in London, all of this, those were my jam.
Okay, I agree, and I was always more of a werewolf fan as well. And the one reason I was always more of a werewolf fan was the lack of romanticization of the werewolf. The werewolf was a fucking monster, and the person was always about the human trying to resist the monster, as opposed to the vampire mythos, which is all about sex. And it's all about, the passion of the blood, and I must blah, blah. Fuck off.
Yeah, that's what it became, which is kind of funny because if you look back at the starts of vampire fiction, not even vampire folklore, but the starts of vampire fiction, vampires are still monsters.
Yes.
Even though they might have some sprinklings of romanticism, it's just a veneer, and they are monsters. But then Anne Rice comes along.
Well, there are people who would say Bram Stoker's vampire Dracula is about sex as well.
The book doesn't portray that as much, though.
No.
The book is very much, in that detached newspaper kind of recounting kind of so the movies, of course, because movies got by on sex and violence, even in the earliest days, even if it was lightweight, it's like, oh no, an ankle, but that was scandalous, right? But so yeah, the romanticism sells, and that's the thing. Nothing made me angrier, and actually, I couldn't read. I started reading them, but so I don't know if you know this, but like Anne Rice's sister also writes horror fiction,
Right?
Her name under the name Alice Bluchart, and she has a series called The Wolf King.
Right.
It is a historical. The first book is cool because it's set during the fall of Rome, and it's about a bunch of Gaul werewolves, or they're like Lombards. I think is what they are. They're Lombard, Goth, whatever. They're barbarian werewolves, right? And it's all about them, but it's still. But I got it. I'm like, cool, historical werewolves. You're speaking two of my languages here, right? And then I started reading. I'm like, just tear the bodice off right now. Come on. It's like, will he pick me? Kind of that kind of book. Will this sweaty barbarian werewolf choose me as I'm being ransomed by my uncle and my cousin because I have some smattering of Charlemagne's bloodline in me? I'm like, no, what are you doing to me? I wanted werewolves and the fall of Rome, and I got this. And then I read the about the author. I'm like, oh, it's Anne Rice's sister or sister-in-law or whatever. It's basically, I'm like, all right, now it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was like catfished by a novel.
Nice. I know how that feels, although my catfish was an anime. I was just wanting a nice, detective anime. It didn't turn out that way, and I didn't like it.
Yeah. But no, and the other White Wolf game I played a lot of was Mage.
I like Mage. You have to be very creative in it.
Yeah, I loved it for that. If you have a GM who is willing to listen to your mad ramblings as a mage, but also can be fair about it, it's a great Magic system.
Yeah.
But it definitely requires a game master. And it definitely requires you as the player to not be a dick.
I've yet to have... So, my player groups... I have a few players that would say that they really want me to run Mage, but they've never given me the pitch that inspired me to do it. So I've just chosen not to touch the system because I've never found the pitch that made me go, okay, this sounds interesting. Or usually gone, well, this just sounds like abuse. So no, thank you.
Now, granted, a lot of my experience playing was in the wonderful online Mux game that I've mentioned a few times called Dark Metal, which was a cyberpunk World of Darkness hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
That was just amazingly well done. But a mage can get away with murder in a high-tech society because coincidence allows you to get away with so much when tech is on the line. Like, today, coincidence can be a little iffy, but when you have cyborgs running around, suddenly your life and matter mage can get away with a lot. Because you're just imitating cybernetics half the time. But also, that was the game where I played a human character who was really badass because I played a human cyborg. And most vampire and werewolf players kind of poo-poo the combat system in that game because they're usually so invulnerable to combat, especially when dealing with mortals, that they don't pay attention to how deadly a mortal can be with the right weapon and the right skill set. And so when you engage those people, those players who are like, I'm a werewolf, what are you going to do? Shoot the shit out of you because I'm a cyborg with a gun. I'm a vampire, what are you going to do? Shoot the shit out of you because I'm a cyborg with a gun.
That's one of the arguments I got into when I did Vampire, was that one of the players would argue that humans shouldn't be that much of a threat. And I went, you and I are not on the same level. Like, humans should be one of the once they identify you as a threat, you don't stand a chance.
Well, that's the whole point of the masquerade too.
Yeah,
is because the vampires have the masquerade because they know if humans ever got wise, that they'd be done for because there are a lot more humans, and humans have tech that can take them out.
Yeah, but I've had players that would just straight up go like, "Oh no, I'm not." That's more of a thing. Like, they acknowledge that, but like they just never saw the human hunters as a threat. I was just like, you really should.
My favorite part of playing Vampire the Masquerade LARPing, so Mind's Eye Theater, was either being part of the council or being the prince and waiting for some stupid fucking power gamer to break the masquerade. And they didn't understand. So they always thought breaking the masquerade meant revealing themselves as vampires. It's like, no. Breaking the masquerade is drawing unwanted attention to the camera.
Leaving a string of bodies.
Specifically using your influences in ways that are insane. And what one of them had done was, in a bid to take me out as prince, had used their military influence to get a jet fighter from a local air base here in Montreal to attack the Elysium. And I'm like, and so we're just like, we had to, pool all our resources and get all our influence together and media suppress the story and do everything we can. And it's a gas explosion and what have you. But now that fucking venture is fucked because we're going for full fucking masquerade breach and we're going for death. And it's just going to be like,
you don't get a plane off the tarmac from a military base without somebody knowing something's up.
Yeah.
And a military jet doesn't just like missile a building in downtown wherever.
Yeah. And it was great because his clan did their like perfunctory defense of him. The elder did the perfunctory we should, but you could they were clearly like, fuck this guy, he just broke the mask.
We're gonna go through the motions, but
we're doing the motions, but this guy's fucked. And then in the end it was Lex Talionis, and that was the end of that fucker. You know what I mean? But we
Sergeant
had a
Dragon.
caitiff. We had a caitiff sheriff. And the reason we had a caitiff sheriff and we allowed the caitiff to be the sheriff and get a lot of power was because one of the things I did as Prince was say, we are never playing favorites with the clans. So by having this caitiff as the sheriff, he is not beholden to any of the fucking clans. He is beholden to the city. He is beholden to the domain. He is beholden to our Elysium. And I had fucking, the Bruja Elder was upset because it should be a Bruja, and the Gangrel were upset. Everybody was upset. But at the end of the day, 7 or 8 dead vampires later, nobody could fucking start clan wars over this shit because it was a caitiff always doing the dirty work for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, on the topic of breaking the masquerades, in the game that I played, me and the game master, we agreed that it was best for my character to be killed off because again I did a couple of things, and we agreed my character took it too far. It's also a good chance for me to play a new character and bring something else in, and allow for a whole new arc to be brought around. So me having a character death that marked the end of a time period for the players was also a lot of fun, and there was something that was agreed between me and the game master, so the other players didn't know, and it all looked like okay, this character was now being put down.
Yeah, those games require you to be aware of the world. Those are games where you definitely have to pay attention. I remember on that dark metal mush. So Mexico was completely under the thrall of the vampires at this point. Mexico was basically Sabbath territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the point where they were almost openly engaging there because they're like, fuck the masquerade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a player who was in because the way that the digital world was set up, because it's a monks type of game, right? You could go through California. It was all set in Southern California, but you could get on the highway and you could go down to Tijuana, right? And so Tijuana, there was a bar there, and that was kind of the main Sabbath hangout was this place in Tijuana. And I remember a player going in there and just like, you can't do anything to me because you can't break the masquerade. And they're just like, well, first of all, look around you. Does anybody seem like they give a fuck? Second of all, you just said masquerade openly. You're kind of like now we have to kill you because you clearly know about the masquerade.
Plus, the Sabbat don't protect the masquerade. That's a Camarilla thing. It's
Camarilla. Well, again, you have to pay attention to where you're at. You're like, oh, you're vampires. You can't break the masquerade. But
no, nothing showed you the difference between intelligent players and stupid players than Vampire. Vampire was like the fucking Occam's razor of player intelligence. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And what would be the best way to do it, especially in the live action, was find someone whose passions govern them. And you need to take them out. So fuck with their passionate, fuck with their ego, don't fuck with anything else, but just make them mad because they're going to fuck up. So I got fucked over in a game in Vancouver, which was basically all I wanted was to kill the sheriff because the sheriff had killed someone that was a friend of my character's. So I got involved with a plot to overthrow the prince. Okay. Going along with everything. Tonight's the night we're going to make our move. Everything's great. And I immediately go find the seneschal. And I'm just like, hey, can I talk to the prince? He's like, yep. Sets up the meeting. I go, this is what's happening. This is who's doing it. This is what's going on. He's like, why are you telling me this? I went, because Craven needed to die. We killed Craven. My revenge is satisfied. I have no issue with you as a prince. He's like, okay, well, I'll remember this. I said, good, because I won't. And I turned to the Ventrue seneschal and I went, can you please erase my memory of this conversation? And he's like, yeah, fuck, mental challenge. I'm like, submit. I go back to the fucking meeting. My character now knows knows nothing about betraying everybody. And they're trying to figure out who betrayed everybody. And they're doing fucking, that fucking aura perception and asking questions. I'm losing the challenges, but I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what's going on. And legitimately, I'm reading is completely honest on that shit. Fucking mwah. And that's why I loved that game. It was so much fun fucking with everybody.
Yeah. I still, like I said, I didn't get to play too much of the politics of vampires because I didn't play Vampire much. Did get to deal with vampires from the outside all the time, either as a werewolf player or a mage player, because I had that tasty quintessence. And I was an orphan mage, so I didn't have any particular tradition to protect me or back me up, and I hadn't found a cadre or anything to belong to. And then, of course, as a human cyborg, everybody thought I was the enemy. But I played 3 different characters on that much, so.
See, I never played a lot of vampire tabletop because it didn't interest me. I liked the politics. I liked the scheming and the plotting of builders and stuff like that.
The muxes I was on were really good for that. Honestly, if you probably would have got a lot out of that back in the day, Bear, too, because I sat in rooms on the muxes where they were doing their thing, because I'm on Albuquerque by night, which is one of the other muxes I played on. I came onto the game as a human player and ended up becoming somebody's ghoul. And
nice.
I got because the best games, so the best muxes had a certain quota for their paranormal characters, and then anybody else who wanted to play had to come in and play a human, because they needed the city to be full of potential victims, allies, and just general citizens. So anyways, on Albuquerque, I remember sitting in a room as just this freaking ghoul, just listening to the vampires politic back and forth. I'm like, la 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 la, this is fun. I'm gonna die. And but no, the because it was text based, everybody's getting time to type out what they're saying. So I think a lot of people are basically stretching their creative writing legs when they're doing that too. You get a lot of really good discussions and emotes. I remember my cyborg character didn't die when he should have, because I got caught in a public park armed in the corporate sector, and so MetSec came down and took me, and I role played my character having a PTSD flashback because he had been a veteran of the Central American Wars. And I'm getting messages, like out of character messages from the guys playing MetSec, and they're like, dude, this is one of the best scenes we've had in forever. The only reason we haven't killed you is that we're just having such a good time. Like watching you role play, and you're not being a dick. He's like, so often when we come into these situations, they immediately start screeching at us in the out of character channel about like, yeah, you guys are assholes and you can't do this to me and blah, blah. Because MetSec was sort of the admin quality control on the mush. So they were an out of character hammer that was used in character, but basically a GM's tool if you had a GM, but they were kind of a collective, basically trusted admin level players who could come in their AV with its minigun and their assault team and go after you.
What fucking version of vampire were you playing?
It's dark metal. It was a cyberpunk World of Darkness hybrid.
Okay.
It was awesome. I was like, I run that as a tabletop at one point because it was such a well done scenario. I remember MetSec got wise that there was a big Camarilla party on a boat in the harbor, and they actually ran by and did basically a AV Gatling gun strafe of the building. They're like, somebody was dumb enough in game to basically tip off MetSec that there was this big gathering of paranormals, and MetSec's like, nope. So everybody's rolling tons of dice to try and stay from bleeding out or raging out or whatever. They're so, because it was a big peace meeting, I guess, between the paranormals and stuff. And like you couldn't even go into the corporate sector because there were coded biosensors in the game. Like if you tried to go into the corporate sector off a subway or off a roadway or a sidewalk or whatever, you would have to go through biosensors. And if you were a vampire, you're dead, so you didn't register on a biosensor. And if you're a werewolf, they could pick up the gene that gave you the werewolfism, because you remember in World of Darkness, it's genetic. So they're like, you're not human. You're not human. The only people who could really pass were the mages, because they didn't register as physically abnormal. And then cyborgs, of course, are going, whoop, whoop, whoop. You got a whole bunch of hardware in you. So it was fun. It was a great game. Spent years on that thing.
I think I'm gonna have to bounce here. It
Me
has been
too,
a lot of
man.
fun.
Yeah.
It's been crashing hard.
I
Yeah,
gotta
Bear
probably
is
play
sleepy.
Blinders.
What was that? What did you
Sorry,
say,
what?
Eli?
I said you're sleepy.
Oh, dude, I gotta crash. I gotta take a nap.
Yep. All right, cool. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on and just hanging out and talking everything that we talked. A lot of
That was fun.
World of Darkness talk, a lot of superhero talk, a lot of horror talk, and a little bit of Star Trek. But thanks for everybody who showed up in the chat. You know who you are. And I will see y'all next Sunday. Have a good one.
Bye.
Later, folks.
Bye now.